Welcome to Rewatch or Return, the podcast where we put movies through the ultimate test across 10 universal categories to decide, does it call for a definite rewatch, a definite trip to the return bin, or does our subjectivity cause it to fall somewhere in between? This week, we're looking at The Shining. Week 3 of the old spooky season movies. This one's probably going to be a little bit short. A lot because some random things happened and caused me to kind of be behind on getting this thing done. Found a puppy in the middle of the highway. There's that. Kind of slowed me down on trying to sit down and record it. Had to take care of that little guy. Anyway, this is such a odd film for me to even try to break down or do anything with. So in my head, I'm saying this was more than likely going to be a pretty short episode, but it may not be by the time it's all said and done. Anyway, with that said, let's jump right into Fast Forward Facts. Let's dig into the blood-soaked carpet of controversy. Stanley Kubrick versus Stephen King. When King wrote The Shining in 1977, it was a deeply human story, a tragic descent into madness fueled by alcoholism, isolation, and domestic tension. Jack Torrance is a man wrestling with his demons, and the horror comes as much from his failures as from supernatural forces. Kubrick? He threw that subtle human tragedy out the snow-covered window and replaced it with cold, clinical terror. Jack Nicholson's Torrance feels unhinged from the first scene, and the Overlook Hotel itself becomes less a haunted house than a perfectly symmetrical, nightmare-inducing machine. King famously called it a beautiful car with no engine, and honestly, it's hard to argue. Emotional warmth? Minimal. Visual obsession? Maximum. That said, Kubrick's vision created a film that's mesmerizing in a way that the novel never intended. Every corridor, every hallway, every snapshot of that checkerboard carpet is meticulously composed, dripping with dread, and practically dares you to keep watching. Nicholson's improvised moments, like the now iconic, "Here's Johnny," gives chaos its face, while Shelley Duvall's raw terror makes the audience squirm. And yes, Kubrick was famously torturous on set. Duvall endured repeated takes, hours of isolation, and sheer psychological pressure. It was grueling, borderline cruel, but it gave the film an intensity that still hooks viewers 40 years later. And now let's talk about legacy. The Shining has seeped into pop culture like a persistent, unsettling ghost. The carpet pattern alone has become instantly recognizable, often referenced in everything from memes to fashion. The film's imagery, the twins in the hallway, the blood flooding the elevator, the maze chase, is endlessly parodied, studied, and celebrated. Directors, cinematographers, and even music video creators continue to borrow Kubrick's compositional genius. Then there's the sequel, Dr. Sleep, from 2019, which paid homage while leaning closer to King's original emotional core. Fans debated endlessly, did it finally reconcile Kubrick and King? Maybe, maybe not. The theories alone are a rabbit hole, hidden messages about the Native American genocide, the Holocaust, reincarnation, and even Kubrick confessing to faking the moon landing. Whether you believe them or not, they've kept The Shining alive in online forums, academic essays, and midnight screenings for decades. And let's not forget the sheer influence on horror filmmaking itself. From Wes Craven to Ari Aster, countless directors have absorbed its blend of psychological dread, creeping isolation, and uncanny visuals. At the end of the day, Kubrick versus King isn't really a battle, it's a yin-yang. King gave us heart, Kubrick gave us the nightmare, and together, whether intended or not, they created a cinematic ghost that refuses to leave. Endlessly replayed, endlessly analyzed, endlessly terrifying. Even if you've seen it 100 times, stepping back into the Overlook still feels like stepping into another world. One that's symmetrical, silent, and just a little bit insane. Alright, with all that down, let's jump into what the critics said about this film. The tomato meter sits at an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the popcorn meter sits at 93%. That's on Rotten Tomatoes website. We will now check out what the top 10 critics said about The Shining. Wendy Ide from The Times in the UK says the supernatural joins forces with psychosis in Stanley Kubrick's superb adaptation of a Stephen King bestseller. Jay Scott from the Globe and Mail says Kubrick sabotages his own thesis in the most knuckleheaded way conceivable. We can't be charged as accomplices in horror when there's no horror. David Denby from New York Magazine says there are a few terrific thrills and some eerie moments of dislocation that only Kubrick could achieve, but most of the movie is unfelt, unscary, and bizarrely heavy-handed. It's the first pompous haunted house movie. I kind of might sort of agree with that a little bit. Matthew Rosa says, from Salon.com, says The Shining is woke, but in that the movie subtly addresses complex social issues, and because the in-universe clairvoyant act of shining allows characters to see past the future atrocities, some politically charged, that occurred in the Overlook Hotel. Whatever, dude. Lee Lescaze, I'm not sure how to say that, from the Washington Post says, it's an interesting movie, but not the ultimate work in its genre that some expected from one of the great directors. Adam Naiman from The Ringer says the altered tone suits Kubrick's gallows humor, which was always about confronting and critiquing his audience's baser impulses. Reinventing The Shining as a slapstick comedy about murderous patriarchal insecurity is a daring move. Bob Thomas from the Associated Press says Kubrick is a master of visual images, and many of the scenes display his brilliance, but much of the suspense ends in anticlimax, and Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall seem overextended in trying to maintain the terror. It's a little bit true there. Bruce McCabe from the Boston Globe says, when you sit down to The Shining, you sit down with normal expectations to be diverted, perhaps even being gripped, but not being undermined. But the film undermines you in powerful, inchoate ways. Ernest Leogrand, maybe, from the New York Daily News says, shock effect and graphic imagery don't compensate for the sense of pointlessness and even distaste that is left at the end of the movie. Derek Malcolm from The Guardian says, if The Shining isn't trivial, it certainly encourages one to think that it is, but perhaps even that's a change for the better. Generally, it's the other way around. All right, moving right along to First Time or 50th. You know, this is not a movie that I grew up real familiar with. I had seen it a couple times on TV, like as a kid, but it's not like a movie that was ever a favorite or anything anybody around me ever watched a whole lot. So which was it? I mean, like I knew from a pop culture perspective, I was familiar with it and familiar with certain things that had to do with it, but like I wasn't overall super familiar with just like the from a First Time or 50th, this might as well been my first time watching this movie, to be honest with you. I own it now, and I only own it because I don't have the movie, and if I was going to watch it, I was going to have to rent it, and it was like $3.99 to rent or $5 to buy, and so I went ahead and bought it. So now I own this movie. But anyway, this might have been literally the first time I've ever sat down and just watched this movie from the beginning to end, especially of not being on television, not being edited for TV or whatever. So this is a movie that you could say, in a way, is my first time to watch it as is. Moving right along to be continued. Would a sequel work for this film? And if there's a sequel, should there have been? There is a sequel. I have not seen it. I've heard about it, read a little bit about it, and I don't guess there's any reason why there couldn't be a sequel. Now, sequel to the movie or a sequel to the book? You know, are we talking, is there, I don't know if there was even a sequel to the book written. Did they just do a sequel to the movie? I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. My position on this is that the movie leaves a lot kind of hanging and what in the world is going on. So it kind of makes sense for there to be a sequel to maybe explain some things and flesh some things out. I don't, other than, I think it was a made-for-TV movie anyway. I'm not really sure. It may have been in the theaters. That was not the film that I'm discussing here, so I don't know a whole lot about it from that perspective. But I can't say any reason why I don't think there should be a sequel. I mean, as far as the story goes, there's definitely a lot of stuff that it just left unsaid and unknown, and kind of like, what in the world is going on, and what did that mean, and what is this, and what is that? So, yeah, like, give me a sequel and give me answers, you know what I'm saying? Maybe I'll go watch that and try to see if it did answer any of the questions for real. All right, before we jump into the final segment, today's episode is brought to you by PrepStartsNow.com, your go-to spot for emergency and outdoor preparedness. If you're anything like me, you'd rather be prepared and not need it than need the essentials and not have them. From 72-hour emergency essentials, camping gear, car emergency essentials, multi-tools, first aid, and even home gardening supplies as you start to grow some of your own food, they've got you covered for all of it. And the best part is, as a listener, you can use the promo code Rewatch to get a 15% site-wide discount, and you'll also be helping out the show as they give us a small reward for your business in the process. Head to PrepStartsNow.com/discount/rewatch. That's PrepStartsNow.com/discount/rewatch, or simply enter the code Rewatch at checkout and get prepared today. Now is the time to move into the final verdict. And generally right here, I would do some sort of recap a little bit. This movie is so, what in the world is going on? There's no real way to recap this other than giving you like the most basic of basics, as in there's a family, they move into this hotel to take care of it over the winter. The dad goes crazy and starts trying to kill his family because the hotel is essentially seemingly haunted. That's the gist, or a basic recap of the film. I'm not going into any more details. Watch the friggin' movie. I have a lot to say about some things involving this film. Anyway, that's the best. That's the only recap that I'm going to give you. There's everything else in here is beyond anything that I could try to explain. Anyway, moving right along to the final verdict. This is where we put the films to the test across 10 categories based on a scale from 1 to 5, which looks like this. 1 is poor, 2 is weak, 3 is fair, 4 is good, and 5 is excellent. The verdict scale goes from 10 to 20 as a return it, 20 to 30 return worthy unless you're feeling nostalgic, 30 to 40 leans rewatch but debatable, and 40 to 50 is certified rewatchable. Let's jump right into story and plot. Is the narrative compelling and coherent? Does it still hold up on a rewatch? No. Look, guys, there's a lot of people that love this film. It's a very beloved film by a lot of people. There's some great things about the film, but when we're talking, that's what makes this fun, and what makes it kind of different. And is that like a lot, like I've said this before, some movies I might as a whole go not really a fan, but then breaking them down category by category, they might end up turning out better than I expected. And then some movies I might be a fan, and then breaking them down category by category, they don't quite make the mark of where I would like them to be. We'll just see how that goes. But as far as story and plot goes, my biggest issue with this is, other than the recap, the basic like recap part of the story arc that I told you there, like they go to the hotel, like he gets a job at a hotel, they're taking care of it over the winter, he starts going crazy, really wild and crazy stuff starts happening, their kid has some sort of ability, and then he becomes murderous, and then there's a bunch of stuff involved that makes you go, what in the world does that mean? What does that mean? Where did that come from? What's he talking about? Like, why? Oh, hey, it ended, but I don't really still know exactly what happened or what went on. There's a lot of people that love things that are all about hidden meaning. I like Easter eggs are cool. If you want to put an Easter egg in a movie and go, hey, like, that they put that number there because of this. Like, that happens a lot in like Pixar movies and a bunch of different stuff. There's nods to all kinds of stuff in all kinds of movies. That's a different thing. There's so many theories and things around this. Like, there's a point to me when like artistry or trying to be unique or trying to do something that's interpretive or whatever, it just becomes like far from interesting to me. And this movie pushes that a little bit with me as far as we're talking story and plot here. I just don't feel like there's much to the story. It's like you decided that these couple of things were going to be like key touch points, and then the rest was just peppered nonsense that didn't make a lot of sense and didn't quite tell you what was going on. Like, I don't I like movies that make me think, but I don't want to watch movies that don't give me answers. That's annoying. Give me a cliffhanger if you know that like something else is coming, or we're going to answer that in this next thing. But there's just a bunch of stuff in this movie, and it's like, what does that mean? Why is that? There's just some really. It's just far out there. I can't, like. I would rather watch a movie that is like a, Amityville horror kind of thing, where like people move into the house and the house there's something going on there and it's responsible for this. But this was like different. There's like this sort of reincarnation thing in this, but then there's like the shining side of the kid has an ability, but the dad's sort of like maybe be part of this like reincarnation process of like, keepers of the hotel that keep coming back and murdering their family. Like, there's just a lot of stuff going on that's like, what are you trying to do here? What are you trying to say here? What's the actual story? What does The Shining have to do with anything? Like, the movie's called The Shining, but I don't truly understand. This may sound stupid of me. The Shining was kind of like the least important part of the whole thing. Like, it felt so disjointed. The kid has the ability, and he's seeing things about murder and all this kind of stuff, but that still ultimately has no real effect on Jack Nicholson's character and what's going on with him. Maybe he has The Shining too, and his alcoholism affects that, or something, whether he's not drinking and he is, and there's just so much going on that it feels like this doesn't even know what it wants to be. It doesn't know what it wants to say. It doesn't know what it wants to do. It's just like, kind of like, well, we'll just kind of make it up as we go along, and we'll just sort of explain it away as we're not really sure, and you can figure it out on your own and make up your own mind on what you think was the reason for. It's just story and plot, not a fan. In as far as the way that they did it and the way that they just had this super disjointed story and disjointed plot, and I'm giving it a 2.8 out of 5 for story and plot. Moving along to characters and performances. Are the characters memorable and well acted, or forgettable and flat? I think that Jack Nicholson's performance was pretty solid. There were times when it felt a little over the top, but it was like intentionally over the top. His facial expressions are killer. There's so much. He just like plays it really well. He was like the high bar for the movie. The Duvall female actress, she does a good job of seeming distraught and like whatever, but like there's points when like I just couldn't hardly do it. I couldn't hardly deal with the way that she was like sort of flailing around the hotel, and just like she's just like a lot of this going on, and like the way it felt like, hey, like get your bearings about you, walk with like you're trying to do something, like you have some purpose. And she was not couldn't function. She just, and there's a little bit of that was just like over the top, overly freaking out. I don't know. I couldn't hardly deal with that. There's nothing special about anything else in the film, any other acting. I think like from characters and performances, even the kid, like there's nothing that draws. Like there's nothing about the kid's performance that, not that he did bad, but there's nothing about him that's like, man, that kid really like, he's not what's his name from E.T. or think like Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone, or any of these kids that's like just come in and sort of like own things. This kid didn't do that, from my opinion anyway. I'm not knocking him being able to, that he didn't perform or what. I'm just saying like he didn't have this capturing performance. So because of Jack Nicholson's fantastic performance, in my opinion, and everybody else's just kind of like whatever, it worked. I'm putting characters and performances at 3.5 out of 5. Moving on to pacing and entertainment value. Were you entertained the whole time? Did the movie keep your attention? Does it feel too slow, too rushed, or just right? It's just kind of in the middle. Like, there were times when I was like really interested in what's going on, and there's times when it was like super dragging, and I was just like, come on, like, I gotta watch this movie for this podcast. Let's just get it over with already. I felt that way at times, and then sometimes I was like sucked in on like what's going on here, you know, particularly when you're showing me inside room 237 and I'm like, what's in there, what's going on, I gotta know. You know, there's just different things that really pull you in, and there's things that make you go, all right, let's go, let's move it along. Particularly some of the parts with I'll get into the music later, but there were some parts where like the only thing that the movie was trying to do was almost like just annoy you to death. I don't know, it wasn't even frightening or scary or whatever. There's a point when like there's certain scenes where it hangs on things way too long, there's nothing going on, and all they do is just like nails on a chalkboard with the music stuff, to the point where I'm just like I had to turn it down at moments so that like we could let's just get past this. Like you're hurting my ears, my animals are freaking out, going like, what's going on? So there's just a lot of like dull, dead moments. If you got rid of the music out of the scene, there was nothing going on, and there wasn't nothing suspenseful or nothing. So pacing and entertainment value, I'm just putting kind of at a fair mid 3 out of 5. Moving along to dialogue and quotability. Are there iconic or memorable lines? Do people still quote it? Does the dialogue feel natural or cringy? Yeah, this is like the iconic lines from this, and things from this movie. The, you know, the here's Johnny. Everybody's seen that. Yes, I would say at times, depending on, you know, age group and all that, it's still a quotable thing. You know, the here's Johnny, the red rum stuff with a kid. There's a lot of iconic stuff in this film. Even like the all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. That's not necessarily dialogue or anything, but like that is it's at least text that you see on the page. All that stuff's very iconic to this film. So there's some quotable stuff in there. I don't feel like the dialogue was all that bad. I mean, I put it between, I wouldn't put it at cringy, but I would put it not so quite natural at times. But for dialogue and quotability, because I do think there's some really iconic stuff in here, I'm going to put at a 4 out of 5. And moving on to soundtrack and score. Does the music enhance the film or date it? Does it elevate the emotional tone of the film or feel out of place? Is it iconic or generic? All right, here's the deal. The movie opens with some stuff, some notes. I can't remember the piece that it's from, but it's like the same stuff that's at the beginning of A Clockwork Orange, I think. There's a handful or a series of notes that belongs to a certain piece of music, and it's used as the flyover as they're driving in, you know, through the mountains or whatever. That's not really part of the rest of the movie for the most part, I don't think. But, or maybe it is. Anyway, there's not a lot memorable about the soundtrack, I'll put it that way. So, like, does the music enhance the film or date it? Put it this way, the music gives the film a feel that wouldn't be there otherwise. I mean, like, completely. I mean, like, as the scene doesn't mean anything without the music. And I don't mean that in a good way, even. There's times when I'm like, what is going on? You're just walking in, there's a ballroom, and you're walking from here to the bar over there, and there's just, like, eerie, dissonant crap going on, and I'm like, what are you, like, what's supposed to be happening here? What am I supposed to be feeling? I don't feel anything. I'm kind of just annoyed that you keep playing this same kind of music over everything. It's like you're trying to trick me into feeling a way that I don't really feel about what's going on at all. It's one thing to help me feel something. It's one thing for like this to go on. This is going on, and if you're not quite sure this is going on, or this is how this moment's supposed to feel, we're going to help you out with the music. Like, that's one thing. But this is like nothing's going on. It doesn't mean anything. It's just random nonsense happening. And we're going to play some stuff that is supposed to be suspenseful music that comes across more annoying to me, to be honest with you. I think it enhances the film it enhances the film at times, but it really annoys me at times too. I don't really know that it at times it elevates the emotional tone of the film. At times it really doesn't. It does feel out of place at times when it's like, there's nothing happening here. There's no reason to do this. Stop hurting my ears and my animals' ears and move on to something else, please. I definitely felt that. Is it iconic or generic? There's nothing iconic about the music in this film to me. I don't remember. I mean, like, if I don't know anybody that is really into film, I could say, like, hum me some of this stuff. This feels like sort of your generic strings, suspense, dissonant chords and things. So for soundtrack and score, I'm just putting it there in the middle at fair. There were some times when it fit with what was happening, and then there was a whole lot of times when it didn't fit at all, and they just put it there for the heck of it. And yeah, so soundtrack and score gets a 3 out of 5 from me. Moving to cinematography and visual style. Is it visually engaging or stylish, regardless of effects budget or genre? Do the camera work and effects still impress, or do they look dated or clunky? This is where this film really shines. This is where this film really shines. I watched this from the opening, not the opening scene, but at the beginning of the movie when they get to the hotel. I love how not only were they across the room panning, allowing everything to pass in front of the camera as they're on the other side, so the people keep walking and the camera keeps moving, and if there's something in the way, it's just in the way, but they keep going and going until they get to the other side of it, and then there they are. And then they also walked at a perfect length. There's 4 of them walking in a row at a perfect length from each other, which just looked really cool and had this thing. It was like there was like an uncomfortable thing of like, why are y'all all perfectly walking? It looked almost like the front of, like, is it Abbey Road, the Beatles, walking across the street. It kind of gave those vibes. I don't know if that was intentional or not. But yes, there's some of the visuals are great. The long hallways, the symmetry of things, the geometric, the use of geometry in it. There's one really awesome. It's not that it's awesome. I just like that they did it when he is hatcheting or axing his way through the door. I love that. For one, I love the Steadicam stuff that they did with this. It does give it sort of an uneasy feeling when you can tell, like, it's not locked off. Somebody's holding the camera, and there's this sort of, it almost feels like you're there, or there's a person there watching them that they don't quite know that's watching them at times. Anyway, but there's the scene where he's axing his way through the door, and the camera moves with him. So it's like, he pulls the axe back, and then as he hatches his way through, his body moves and the camera moves, and we're not only watching him slam the axe into the window, into the door, we're also kind of slamming the camera into the door with the camera pan. And I love that choice to do that. But yeah, the visuals are fantastic. The stuff with the garden maze, the way that they use, especially at night after it snows and they're out there at nighttime, the way they used the lights and the garden maze and all that. I mean, it was really fantastic. A lot of really awesome visuals, a lot of really interesting ways to shoot things. I think that, like I said, the cinematography and visual style is where this movie really, really, really shines. I just think they sacrificed everything else all for that. And that's not really, in my opinion, how to put together a good film, or, to sacrifice telling a great story. Anyhow, I gave cinematography and visual style a 4.5 out of 5 because I think it is really, really fantastic. Moving on to originality and creativity. Does the film feel fresh and inspired or like something you've seen 100 times? Was the film groundbreaking or formulaic? Does it bring something unique? Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of originality in this. I think that Kubrick wasn't he wasn't even trying to copy Stephen King's story. He was trying to make his own. And I can appreciate him trying to do something different, trying to do something, it was so disjointed and it was so convoluted and it was kind of jumbled up and whatever because he was trying to do something different, because he was trying to do his own thing. He ran in that, there's a class of directors from that era that are just top notch, from the perspective of doing their own thing. They're not trying to be anything. They're not trying to do any formula. It's like, I'm doing my thing. I don't care what everybody else is doing. I don't care what the whole of Hollywood's doing. I'm doing my thing. I want to do my thing. Leave me alone. And I appreciate that about them. But yeah, I mean, I think there's at least a fresh and inspired thing about this film for sure. It's definitely not like something I've seen 100 times. I've not seen it 100 times for that matter, but it was very unique in its visuals, and it's just a very unique film in general. I don't know that the film was like so much. It might be. I mean, I would say maybe it was groundbreaking, not from some way of like paving some path or anything like that, but I think it was so influential. The visuals were so influential that they had a lot to do with so many things that came. So I think from a visual aspect, I think it was groundbreaking, and brought definitely something unique to things. So originality and creativity, I'm giving a 4 out of 5. Moving on to theme and message. Is there a deeper takeaway, and does it explore ideas that resonate today? Guys, just going to shoot you straight here. When I was going over this, I thought, is there anything at all? Is there any message about this at all? There's a whole bunch of theories and subliminal message possibilities and all that. But is there anything that I could take away from this movie? A lesson, a commentary on something? Some people might say domestic violence, and some people, but there's nothing that I walk away from this film and go, this teaches me a lesson here, at all. Maybe you can help me out with that. I just don't find anything in any of it where I feel lesson learned. Oh yeah, I can appreciate that. So 1 out of 5 for theme and message. This is a very lowest of the low of all of these episodes thus far for that category. Theme and message, 1 out of 5. Moving on to cringe factor. Any jokes, effects, or moments that haven't aged well or were always bad, moments that make you wince now, campy, cheesy, bad effects, outdated jokes that aren't funny, etc. I think that there's not so much like a cheesiness about this film that would make it cringy, but there are some cringy things about this film, like I already explained. The cringiness of, I'm not going to tell you, or I'm not going to really explain anything to you. I'm just going to leave it into this sort of wishy-washy, figure it out on your own. Maybe you can determine what you think happened here, or what you think the thing is, or what you think the story truly is. That's cringy to me. That, it may not be to most people, but it's cringy to me. The way that the music was used in many cases, in many scenes where it wasn't necessary and it was over the top, was cringy to me. The Duvall ladies acting at times was a little cringy to me. Even the way that they used the kid with certain things was cringy to me. So there is some cringe, but I'm just going to kind of put it right in the middle with the cringe factor. It's not super duper cringy, but it's not without it. It's just sort of right there in the middle. That's my feelings about it. It doesn't have to be yours. Moving on to nostalgia and rewatchability. Does it hold up to your memory of it? Does it still matter today? Is it timeless, or has it aged poorly? Does a rewatch ruin the magic? And would you honestly watch it again? Does it hold up to your memory of it? Well, I didn't have a lot of memory of it. It didn't quite live up to, after all the years of not quite remembering a whole lot about it, it didn't live up to my expectations of what it has been built up to be, put it that way. And yeah, so there's that. So no, it didn't live up to what I wanted it to be or was expecting it to be, given the nature of how iconic it is. Does it still matter today? I think it still matters in the influence that it has had. Is it timeless? I don't know that it's a timeless film or a timeless story or whatever. I don't really think so. I think that, again, I think the effect that it has had on visuals is timeless, but I don't think the movie itself is timeless. So its cinematography and visual style is timeless, but that's probably the thing that's I don't think anything else is necessarily timeless. I don't know that it's aged poorly, though. I mean, the film looks fine. It still looks great. I think I probably watched it in 4K. It still looks fantastic, though. Does a rewatch ruin the magic? I didn't have a lot of magic into it, but like I said before, it didn't really live up to what I was hoping it would be after not seeing it for basically my entire life of, at least my entire adult life. Would you honestly watch it again? I would sit down and watch this again to try to see if I could figure some more stuff out, or if I could catch some things I didn't catch that explain some things better or whatever. But this is not going to be a film where I'm going to be like, yeah, that's one of my yearly sit down and watch it, or I can't wait to watch that again, or if I have other options, I'm probably going to go with them over this. It's just the way that it is. So for nostalgia and rewatchability, I put it right there in the middle at 3 out of 5. So where would you assume? I feel like I've had a lot negative to say about this film. That going into it, I was expecting. I didn't hate the film. It just didn't live up to what I wanted it to be, and the story has a lot to. This is just really, really lacking. And it was really it just really drug out at points. So this was a film where coming into this, I thought, or my expectation was, as I started to score these, I was like, this is going to be very low. This is going to end up falling way down on, like, it's going to be another movie that is supposed to be iconic that is going to fall way low. And I'm going to be that guy that has a return score on a supposed iconic film. I don't know why I'm doing quotes. It is an iconic film. There are things about this film that are iconic. I don't think the film as a whole is iconic. I think a lot of people that, quote unquote, love this film or love things about this film probably don't actually love the film, probably don't sit down and watch the film a lot. They're just things that everybody has seen and everybody knows and everybody has heard about this film. Again, because of probably for the most part what Kubrick did visually. So let's see where this thing actually does line up on the verdict scale. Story and plot, I gave a 2.8. Characters and performances, I gave a 3.5. Pacing and entertainment value, I gave a 3. Dialogue and quotability, I gave 4. Soundtrack and score gets a 3. Cinematography and visual style, I gave a 4.5. Originality and creativity, I gave a 4. Theme and message got a 1. Cringe factor got a 3. Nostalgia and rewatchability got a 3. That equals 31.8, meaning that it just barely makes it into the leans rewatch but debatable category. And you know what? I think watching this film, like, I can totally see that makes tons of sense. It's not some big blockbuster kind of like summer smash movie. I can see why a lot of people, especially the artsy fartsy types, that need everything to be, wishy-washy and woo, and could it mean this and could it mean that and whatever. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just making fun of you a little bit. Anyhow, I think like it makes sense that there's people that really love this film, but it also makes sense that like on the broadly, for example, the normie that just watches movies to watch movies and isn't really into like movies or breaking down movies, or if they could review things, they would probably not really know what to say. You normie folk that are like, I like to put on a movie and watch it. I don't think a lot about it. That's the majority of people. So I would say like for the normie, this is probably very much debatable whether or not this is actually iconic. But then for like the film lovers, there's a lot of people, especially like I said, your artsy types that are really into like the sort of interpretive whatever, that are really going to like this. So I think like falling in that leans rewatch but debatable category definitely fits this film. But for me, it feels right being very low in that category. That's just the way it is. I'll say it again, like I say every time. This is my subjective score. You don't have to feel this way. Just don't get get mad at me for having a different opinion, because I'm probably pretty sure that you hate movies that I love somewhere along the lines. So, not that I hated this movie, but you know what I'm saying. I was just making a point there. Yeah, we have The Shining, Stanley Kubrick, the iconic, supposed to be tippy top, expecting it to be the greatest thing I ever saw, with the coming in at a 31.8, leaning rewatch, but debatable. And that is going to end at least the scoring verdict scale portion of this. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sorry that this episode comes out a little late. If you are watching on YouTube and you have not subscribed and you want to see these things pop every week, so you don't want to miss them, it would be awesome if you would subscribe to the channel. There's some music stuff on here as well. I would love to see some comments in the comments section about how you feel about this movie. Tell me why you love it, if you love it, or why you feel however you feel about it. And if you are listening to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, then if you go to Instagram and go to Rewatch or Return, follow that account on Instagram. That would be the account for this, and I'll post every week at least one thing, at least a this episode is out thing for each episode. So on there, if you're listening to the podcast, I know you can't comment on the podcast side of things, but if you want to go to Instagram and you want to comment down in the comment section and let me know how you feel about things and have a little chit chat conversation about stuff there, I'd love that as well. With that said, we're going to close this thing out. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you next week.